Good morning, YouTube. My name is Zanrith. It is spring in Buffalo, and as such I want to make a video for you. This will be my spring checklist. We're going to do it on Heather's Ninja 650 here, and we're going to go through everything that I think you should do before you take it out on that first ride of spring. Of course, this won't be perfect, but this will be for you who want to get out when it's the first 60-degree day and you want to just give your bike a once-over. So we're going to dive into a lot of parts of the bike. First thing we're going to do is we're going to do a walk around on it, and I'm not going to show you everything I look at. We'll just do a little montage, but you just want to check, make sure all your fairings are on tight, make sure nothing's dripping, leaking, kind of give it a once over, make sure nothing looks completely out of place before you dive into more critical areas. So let's get to it. So I went through Heather's bike front to back, made sure that nothing was loose, mirrors, housings, all the fairings, made sure the foot controls, hand controls, everything was tight. Nothing was moving around, nothing was wiggling. The only thing that's wiggling is this ram mount that I gotta fix. Good thing to note for later, but nothing critical right now. The other thing you can do when you go through this part is you can grease all the fittings on the bike, and I don't have the service manual in front of me, so I don't know where those are off the top of my head. I'll have to get that out and do that later. So now that we're done with step one, we'll move on to step two. Step two for me is electrical. We make sure that the whole electrical system's working, nothing's out. Bulbs, blinkers, dash, everything. But we are in Buffalo, so the winters get extremely cold, and I take the batteries out of our bikes and bring them into the apartment to charge. So I've got Heather's battery over there for her bike, and we got to get that installed first. So let's get on that. It's as easy on this bike as removing one seat, two seat, and thanks to our guys at Headlight for not sponsoring this video but selling us some cool bikes. So the first thing you got to do after you get those seats off is I got to get some tools together, a couple Allens, 10mm, and a screwdriver. That way I can get these brackets off that hold the seat and the battery in to put the battery back in. And once we get that in, we can check the whole rest of the electrical system and make sure everything's working. So I'm going to get on that, and we'll get back to you after I get that complete. So Heather's battery is installed now. Everything is nice and tight in here. This wiggles because there's rubber bushing, so it's supposed to. Everything's nice and tight in there though. Battery's installed, everything's on. Let's make sure that the bike turns on. There we go. No problem so far. Looks like we're running at 12.3 volts. Heather's got a dual USB. The voltmeter is going to slowly go down because we have the bike on, but we'll be fine with that. Everything looks good, got no problems. We're just going to turn it off for now, and bike makes some noises, as a lot of you will think, okay, now I can fire up my bike. But let's wait a minute, because we haven't checked to make sure there's enough oil in this bike to actually run the bike. And we haven't looked throughout the rest of the drive chain and everything, because we don't want to start just spinning the tire if there's rust or something that might bind or pinch. So that step two is just the battery. The rest of the electrical system is part 2.1, 4, 6. I don't know where it's going to be, but we're not going to it yet. The next thing I want to check is the tires, front and back. And all you got to do for this is, with Heather's bike, it's going to be great, because Heather's bike, she didn't get out as much as I thought she was going to, but we're good. So what you want to do is get a thread tester. Tread tester. That's not my words again. And you just stick it in there, see what we're at. So you check out throughout parts of the bike, different areas. Usually the deepest areas where I check, and you make sure you got, I want to say they say 30 seconds is what you want to recommend, but I just make sure that they're not flattened out and there's still some groove left. There are wear marks on bike tires. Here's one right here. It's a little bumped up area in the middle of the tire. I don't know if you can tell that on the camera. Get in a little closer. But this area here, and I hope the camera's centered on it, is raised up, and that's a wear mark on your tire if you don't have a tester. And if it's even across, it's time to replace your tire. If there's a dip in there still, you should be good. And of course, some tires, if you're doing a lot of highway riding like we do, the middle of our tire seems to wear, and Heather doesn't like to lean as much, so don't look at the sides of her tire. So I'm going to say this tire looks pretty good. The other thing we have to check is the pressure, but we're going to do tread first, and then the rest of it. Okay, so this one still looks good. Still looks good. Get some dirt off it from just sitting all winter. And these look even better. The rear tire usually looks even better. I'm trying to find a wear mark because I can't see one. Well, either way, we got our tester. We'll do a tester. And it looks like she's at 5:30 seconds. So we are good for tread on these tires. I still can't find a wear mark. It's also kind of dark. I probably should get another light, right? Let's grab my other falling apart light. We'll just check it out. Oh, there's a rock in her tire here. Okay, good. Wasn't a nail head. Oh, that's not bad. Okay. Well, maybe her rear doesn't have a wear. Oh, that's new. Well, good thing we have a tester then. But, yeah, just check your tires, make sure they're clean. We're going to get a pressure gauge on them in a second. And make sure they are pressurized properly. If not, we'll add some air. We'll be good to go. But her tires, I'm giving them an A-OK for the season. Alright, got my tire gauge here. I'm going to check Heather's tire pressure. So, with your tires, usually on the rear chain guard here, which there is no front chain guard usually, but rear chain guard, you can see, and it says what PSI your tires need to be at, what the size and make of the stock tires were, and the tread depth. So I was saying 3mm on the rear, and that's what they're saying. 3mm is the max. It looks like the front can have a maximum tread depth of 1mm. That's interesting. That's cool to know. So I was wrong on the front. It's 1mm, not 3. So make sure to check your bike and your manual for your exact specifications, but that's for the 2019, and I'm going to say probably the whole generation of these Ninja 650. So let's check the pressure on our tire, which should be around 36, and we are 10 PSI low from sitting all winter. So we're 26, so we got to get some air in that. The problem is, not enough power in my garage, as you guys have heard me say, so we have to take this somewhere, or get my battery-powered one, which never seems to work well. So we will drive it down the road probably a quarter of a mile to the local gas station, and we will put air in it, because that won't hurt the tires enough at this PSI. If it was like completely flat, then you don't want to do that. But a little low, I will risk driving it down there for 2 seconds. And the front seems to be low as well. It's at 22, and it should be at 32. So both tires are low, so we got to get air in those. Not a huge deal, especially because we're not going to go far before we get air in them. It's not like we're going to go hundreds of miles, but it's always a good thing to check. And I made sure to get one of these Jayco tire gauges. It's got this little angled end on it. I had those little stick ones, but I couldn't get them in on the bikes. This thing's been a real lifesaver. You know what? I'll throw it in a link below. I got it off Amazon, and I know Amazon is controversial place because of their work practices, but hell, they got a lot of products. So sometimes what can you do? Okay, so now that the tires are done, I think the next thing I want to look at is the brakes on the bike, which, being a new bike, should be fine, but we're going to check them. Let me get my tools together and we'll look at all the brakes. So here we are looking at the front brakes, and what you want to do is take a look at both sides, both rotors, make sure there's no big scoring marks. Like these are normal marks. If you can see the lines on them, there's nothing deep and rigid in there. Make sure there's nothing there. You got to try to look for any warping too. So look at the front of the pedal here. Okay, it looks good. It looks pretty straight. I don't see anything. You'll be able to tell a little bit by the naked eye if it's warped a bit, and you'll hear it too. You'll hear a little do-do do-do if you start spinning the wheel, or you'll see it. Like you can just kind of watch up and where it's close to the bike and just watch for the spacing to change. So I'm gonna say the rotors look pretty good. A little no deep scoring on anything, just a little normal wear. I'm just kind of looking at them all over. I do this sometimes. I should probably wear gloves one of these days, but you know, these days will be okay. So I'm going to say the rotor on the front looked good. The next thing you got to check for is brake pad wear. Now on Heather's bike, how am I going to do this on her bike? Oh, I can see them right there. Those are actually not bad at all. So look in there. You can kind of see how bad the brake pads are. And hers look like they're pretty good. I think the best way to do this, though, would be to remove the whole bracket and pull it off. Let's see. 2 bolts here. It looks like the bracket comes off. Ooh. Sorry, YouTube. I'm smacking against her fairing. Look at that. So what I think I'll do is I'll take this bolt off, these 2 bolts off here. I think that should do it. I'm just trying to look at how this whole system works, because I haven't pulled her brakes off yet before. Yeah, let's pull these off. Okay, so I'm pretty sure these 2, and then this bracket pulls off, and then the whole caliper pulls off. So we can inspect the brakes further. So let's start with that. I'll pull those off, and we'll come back. Okay, pulled these 2 bolts out. Very easy. Whole bracket came out. So let's take, oh man, let's take these off, and let's not try to pull the lines too much. Oh, there's a lot of life left on those. Those grooves in there are your wear marks. So if it's down near the end of those, you want to replace these. Look at those brakes. Those look still pretty nice. No big problems there. And seeing as I just took it off, I'm just going to try to slide it back on. There we go. Okay. Sometimes if you take brakes off, add new brakes, you have to compress the caliper to be able to get it to fit back on. Not a huge deal, just something I thought if I just went quick, we wouldn't have to run into any problems. Let's get these threads started. Voila. Okay. So I'm gonna take the other side off. I'm gonna look at the other side, just make sure there's no uneven wear on them, and then we'll go to the next step on the front brakes. We'll have to do the back brakes as well, but we'll start with the front. So I took a look at Heather's other side of her brakes, and the other caliper on that side, same amount of wear as this side, everything looks great. The other thing you're going to want to do is inspect your brake lines, all of them up through here, and make sure you don't see any signs of wear, which these are all coated, so that's going to be a little bit more difficult. Make sure you don't see any leaks, any bulges really in them, and you can kind of feel around. You'll feel the bulge. If it's bulging, that means the rubber is usually wearing out. And you want to check this all the way up top here. Make sure you're good to go. Awesome. Check your glass sight if you've got one on here. Make sure you've got brake fluid. Make sure it's clean. I don't remember if it says how often. I think it's every 2 to 3 years you want to replace your brake fluid is what they recommend. I know people who've never changed their brake fluid and their bike's just fine, but I like to follow the manufacturer recommendations on that just because I like everything in tip-top shape. So front brake looks great. Play is good. It's not like it's very loose either, so that's good. And yes, you can check your play and you can check everything while the bike's off. It's not like a car where you need the power running for power brakes, because a lot of your bikes don't have it. I'm not sure about, I lied. I'm going to lie about that. Never mind. Scratch that. So now we're going to go to the back. And the back for me is easier because the pads are extremely exposed. And I'm going to keep headbutting you guys off of things because I'm not used to this. Pads are really exposed in the back. You can see them very easily. The rotor's smaller. It's easier to look at. And with Heather's bike, I already can tell that there's a lot of life left on these pads. And there's a lot of life left in this rotor. So the only thing I'm going to do is just test the brake while I'm back here, spinning the tire and pressing the rear brake here. Inspect all the lines. Again, check the reservoir, make sure it's full, make sure it's not too dark and gross. See if you need to replace it, make sure everything's tight in there. And there you go, there's your brakes. Brakes are all checked, she is good to go. Or maybe I go for a spin on it later. So the next step we're going to look at is the final drive, which is on this bike a chain-driven motorcycle. Others can be belt, they can be shaft-driven, and on your electric motorcycles, I don't know what to tell you what to do with that. So let's look at the chain on this bike. Let's look at the sprockets. Now, again, this is a new bike, newer, very new. Like, I don't know, she got less than 10,000 probably miles on it. So looking at the chain, it still looks good. It needs a lubrication, which we will do. You gotta do that before you take her out, and a cleaning. Other than that, the sprocket looks good. Now through this little peephole here, I can see the front sprocket teeth. And it's a little dark in there, but I can make out the silhouette of them, and they look just fine. Now what you want to look for is the sprockets to be sticking up. I don't know how you'll be able to see this well, but sprockets sticking up straight like this. If not, they'll start to curl. They'll start looking like teeth of a... they'll start looking like a velociraptor claw. They're going to start curling like that, and that's when you know you really need to replace your sprocket. There's also other measurements you have to pay attention to on these that are probably spec'd out in the repair manual, so check your specific bike. But for Heather's bike right now, that is good. All I'm going to do is clean up her chain here, give it a lubing so that she's good to go for the season. You also want to check at your depth here and make sure you don't have too much play in it. This is another thing that's going to be on, sometimes it's on the back here actually. Nope. Oh, right here. Okay. Chain information. Doodle-doodle-doo. And it shows you how much slack you can have, which is between adjustment range between 0.8 and 1.2 inches. Now I checked this at the end of last season, and we were like right at 0.9. So I'll check it again, but I'm pretty sure that the chain slack right here is within spec. If you need to do that, there's a million other videos on YouTube that can show you how to adjust your chain. But I will check hers just to make sure because it's the nice guy I am. So I'm going to go figure out what the next step is because I'm pretty sure I'm done with the final drive. I don't think there's anything else. I mean, you can check your foot controls and everything, make sure everything's on there nice and tight. Nothing's a problem. That could be part of the final drive check, I guess. But I'm going to go look at my list that I made over there and figure out what my next step was because I forgot it. What's up, YouTube? So I forgot my last step. So the next step is to look at the fluids in this bike and make sure they all look good. Now I'm trying to figure out where Heather's, looks like her coolant is right here. That's good. So we already checked the brake fluid, but it's always good to double check, make sure there's fluid in there. It's above the low level, which this one's all the way up in here. I see a bubble of air right there. So that fluid's very full. Now for coolant on her bike, I see a coolant. No, I thought that was a reservoir. That is actually the radiator. Huh. Where is her reservoir? Is there a reservoir? Dun dun dun. See, I didn't get the manual for her book yet, so I don't know. So I'll have to look that up and figure out where the coolant reservoir, if there is one, is. If not, I'll figure out how to check it. But you want to check your coolant. Yeah, let's see it. You want to check your oil, which hers looks a little low, and it's pretty dark because it needs to be changed. So what I do every spring is I change all of our bike fluids right in the beginning of the spring, which is usually a little bit after we take it out for the first ride, just because, you know, you get a little antsy. So it's a little low, but it's not bad. So I'm going to leave it for now because we're going to probably change the fluids out in this fully. Check your owner's manuals for... maybe there isn't a reservoir. Maybe it's a closed loop system. Odd. Okay. It's got to be hiding in here somewhere, right, guys? Follow the coolant lines. Coolant into there. Interesting. I will find it. But yeah, check your owner's manual for your specific intervals for changing. I do the coolant almost every 2 years on these bikes because that's when you need to do a valve adjustment. It seems to be about the right time. It's about the time I have to do a valve adjustment on all our bikes. I change the coolant out as well because you got to take coolant hoses off to get to the valves. So that's how I end up doing it. So I get around the interval. So yeah, now I got to find out where that is. But yeah, check your coolant because I'm not going to check this one right now until I figure out where it is. But we have to change it out. I don't know how many miles she has. Let's see how many miles we got. 4,200, Heather. Come on, get those miles up. And wow. So her bike apparently kept the trip A from last year, 1.2 miles. That's when we got fuel and made a little loop home. So when we filled this up the last time, it's gone 1.2 miles. It kept all that information. And the last time she had an oil change. Wow, look at that. That's a neat feature, Kawasaki. Cool. So she's not really due for it. So we're probably going to have to change out her coolant before I do the valve adjustment. So now that the fluids are checked, drive chain's been cleaned and inspected and everything, you got to check the air filter on this, which is all underneath the tank. And I know I'll be changing out Heather's air filter very soon in the spring because we're going to be putting a K&N in it. So I'm not going to check that. but check your air filter. Especially if it's easy to get to. I know in a lot of bikes, like the ZX6R, her Ninja 650, and then, no, actually the Ninja 300 is easier. It's all under the tank. It's so hard. You got to pull the whole tank up, and you got to get underneath it to find the air filter. And it can be a pain, but it's very important. That's another reason I like to go with the K&Ns, because they're supposed to last longer. And I've had them in my cars forever, so I know they last longer. And you clean them every about 10,000 miles. So that's why I like to put them in here, because getting to them can be a pain. Now my bike, the ZX6R, I'm going to have to look at the air filter. It's almost at 10,000 miles. It's going to need probably cleaning. So that one we will check. But for Heather's right now, seeing as I know I'm changing it here very shortly, once I find where she put her air filter, out here or in the apartment, we will check it. So I'm going to say that seeing as everything is checked, we start going through lights. So with the bike off, and I want to double check with her bike, the headlights do not turn on. Engine needs to start it over to do it. But we can check the marker lights each side. And to do this even faster, we can do is turn on the hazard lights, the four-way flashers, and check all of her flashers at once. Easy. But you can't just check that, because what if your button's messed up? Check the left turn. It's working up here, over there, down there. Do right. Beautiful, beautiful. See? It's just little things in life can really help. Brake lights work. You got to check the rear and make sure that the adjustment's right so that it turns on nicely. If not, there's adjusters that you can have for how sensitive your pedal is. I know with my ZX6R, I had to really adjust it because I had to press down very far here for the back brake to come on. And I like to use that if someone's like tailgating me. I just tap it just a little bit because I like to not have my fingers squeezing on the front brake at all. You know, putting too much pressure on the front brake can hurt. So I guess what we can do now is we've gone through everything else on it. Check the horn. Sorry, neighbors. And we can fire her up and then check the headlight. So here we go. Look at that. Fires right up. So low beam, high beam. Low beam's on. High beam's on. Perfect. Everything works. Passing light works. Voila. Okay. I want to say we're almost done with the bike. Let me go and look at my list one last time, and we might do just a final check over. Alright, YouTube. So I went through the whole bike, front to back, and the only thing left to check is the controls. You want to make sure there's about a nickel-sized play in your clutch cable. This just gives enough play so that it doesn't over-tighten. And it looks good. And you just got to make sure it's comfortable. And this isn't my bike, so I can't tell if it's comfortable for me, but sometimes bikes come and the levers are high or low. The ZX6R, I want to say they felt like they were way up here, and I had to like reach up for it. So I moved them down and I adjusted the whole thing. That's a couple bolts at the bottom, and it'll all rotate. So that's really your comfort level. And what I like to do is kind of hold my hands straight out like this and try to create, like with Heather's bike, I'd want these down a little bit more for me. I'd want to create a straight line almost for the levers. And that's just my personal opinion, but just something I like to do. So you like to check all your controls, make sure everything works properly. Like you can push the bike into gear, make sure everything works. Obviously it works better if the engine's running, but I'm not going to run it right now and have it running in this video. So just make sure all your controls are set, everything works fine. With Heather's bike, we've got heated grips as well, which I can turn on, which I won't because I'll drain the battery. And we've got auxiliary lighting that we can check. It looks like her clutch cable looks like it's still within spec. It looks pretty good. So just make sure all your controls are working, everything's hooked up, working properly. Other than that, I'm going to tell you that is the Zanrith way to make sure your bike is ready for spring. There's probably a couple things I've forgotten, but that's basically what I look for before I take it out for a first spin of the season. If you guys have any questions, want to add anything to this video, any of your comments, anything you do differently, let me know. Throw it in a comment. We will we'll read through every single one that I can until I start seeing things for ads and stuff in my comments. I'll just delete those. So hit me up. Hope everyone has a nice, safe spring riding. Remember, for those of you in Buffalo, New York, the cars don't ever look for you anyways, and they're not looking for you now. So keep your head on a swivel, stay safe, ride safely and aggressively safely, if that makes any sense to anyone out there. To you bikers, it probably will. So we'll catch you in the next one. We'll have some more videos coming this spring, summer, fall. 2021 is going to be big. I'm not getting a new bike, I can promise you that, but it's going to be a big year. It's going to be fun. We're going to have a lot of fun this year. So stick around. Catch you guys later.